history going. And I'm going to tell you right now, the reason this started and the reason I say John McCarrick was the one that started it was because the museum is one of the ones that gets funding and does these videos and these movies. I had gone to the Adult Center to see a video of Welcome to Michigan, especially Muskegon. At the time, I saw it was all, and this is not being prejudiced, okay, you guys? It was all Anglos. One African American, no Latinos, around 5 Indians, American Indians, okay? And I said, that can't be. There's a lot of people here. We've done a lot of things, good and bad, but anyhow. So there was 2 friends of mine that came with me to see John. And yes, we did have a good talk. I was bawling him out, arguing with him, saying, what happened to the Mexicans? We were here, we are here. While we were talking, we were going around the museum. And I don't know if all of you know Mary McDonald or not, but Mary McDonald used to work here. She not only did everyone's place, she was a nurse, she's got her master's, she's got her doctorate. Anyhow, she was working with the Community Foundation at the time. And she came down with me, and so did Tracy, another girl. We were walking around, I was telling all this to John, and he was listening like a nice young man. Don't say nothing, just keep getting upset, but didn't say nothing, okay? I'm talking to him like this, and all of a sudden I look up, and at Campbell Wine and Cannon, there's a picture of a Mexican man, and I look up and it's my dad. How did I feel? I started crying, and Mary McDonald said, oh yeah, Connie, all the Mexicans look alike, and yeah, they're all related, and that's your dad, like I'm your sister. Now, Mary McDonald has always been a sister to me. She came into our family and she's still there. She's in California right now. But I told her, Mary, as God is my witness, that's my dad. I went home and I told my sisters about it. I talked with John. And John, what were the 5 things that we were supposed to remember? How did we get here? When? There was 5 questions anyway. And I thought to myself, okay, if you'll help, we'll do it. So then I went and I spoke to some of the community members. And like John says, we can't say no when Connie asks a question. It isn't that you can't say no, it's that I won't take no. Because we're all human and we all love our people and we all love our stories. But it's difficult to write down and remember everything that our families have done. All grand people that have passed away that have made Muskegon what it is, have made the Latino community realize and want more than what we had at that time. And it's just like Mr. Malawi saying, our veterans. How many of us are not proud of our veterans? That's enough because I can talk all day. I'm going to thank all of you for being here, mostly to the panel that's going to be here. But we have them here because we want them to say why they even helped me. Not because we were friends since we grew up in Ryerson Heights, but because the Bracero program was here, yes. Would you believe that in 1935 they were bringing Latinos to Mount Pleasant, to Muskegon, well, Hart, the surrounding communities, Oceana, because they needed farm workers, they needed workers to work out in the fields, and they brought them. Some of the clippings are in the back that we got together when we were writing this book. And I thank the panel completely because what's Lupe and Gloria Torres is one of the persons that helped us out a lot too. She's not here with us today. But we went, thanks again to Dr. Daniel Yates. With this, it would not have been done. I'm going to have him speak a little bit right now, and then we'll let the panel, and I'll get back to speaking to you, okay? Let's hear it for Dr. Daniel Yang.
I don't guarantee I'll stand for the whole time. I have this sore back. We're all about the same age, and you'll probably get the same remarks from other people. And that brings me to an important point, and it goes with Richard's work as well. This started with a bunch of oral histories that Connie and Mary McDonald were doing, 8 or 10 years ago, right? And it was a fortunate time because most of the people they interviewed are no longer living. I mean, they were adults back in the 40s. What we have here are the children of the 40s, and myself included, of course, but their memories of the 40s are about as dim as mine. I can remember the end of World War II, sort of, kind of, and that's it. And they're sort of colored pictures, too, because I only remember the good things, the parties, or the this or that or the other thing. I don't remember how hard it was to work, or things of that sort either. So, and that goes with Richard's work as well. He's sure he'd like to interview some of these veterans, but again, the youngest of them is 88 years old. Most of them are in their 90s, and most of them are enlisted men or women. And so, their recollections are not going to be as full as if you interviewed a general officer or colonel or something like that, but they're valuable nonetheless. But 10 years from now, he won't have anyone to interview. They'll all be gone. So it's important that this work be done. I met Connie, I don't know when, 8 or 10 years ago. I can't remember. And through Mary McDonald. Mary was one of my first students. She's from Ravenna. She'd known Connie for a long, long time. I think she's godmother to one or both of your daughters. So they had known each other a long time. Mary speaks Spanish. And so she introduced me to Connie. We were in the community college library at the time. And they wanted to know how to get started doing historical research. So we made an agreement to meet down at the Hackley Library. Now that's where you begin all of your research. Now if you're not much of a historian, that's where it ends as well. But if you know what you're doing, you go beyond that to all these other locations that you all need to know about if you don't already, such as the museum's archives, for example. A lot of people ignore those. State archives, for example. A lot of people forget to go over there, although we did. Connie and some of these other ladies. And so there's many, many other sources to go to. But anyway, we met at the library, and I remember the first thing I thought we could find material was in the city directories. Now again, a lot of people don't think about that, but I brought the very directory, a copy, not the library's copy. I wouldn't steal from them. But this is the copy we got, and they all remembered Ryerson Heights, but again as children. And so we got the directory out. I'm going to put this down for a minute. I hope you can hear me. And one of the things about the city directories is that they have a section that contains the residents of all the different buildings. Now, they don't do every building if it's a big apartment complex, but they did in this case. They have Ryerson Heights here. It was on what was called then Churchill Drive, of course named for Winston Churchill, and no longer exists. And they have the occupants of every one of the buildings there. All these folks remembered, it was all Hispanic, they remember. That's the way it was. It was everybody there was, but as it turns out, there were only about 8 different buildings of the 45 or something. That's the part they remember, again, but no problem here. I mean, they're 4 years old, 5 years old. They didn't remember these other things. And the other occupants were mostly Caucasians, from what I can gather. Some, I think, were from the Appalachians. Some were from other parts of western Michigan. See, when the war began, business interests went out to the broader community and brought in as many people as they could find who were looking for work. And so this was a wonderful opportunity for everybody who needed a job to get a job. In fact, there was practically zero unemployment. The only people who couldn't get a job were people no one would hire under any circumstances. So anybody could get a job pretty much as long as they were able to do the job. So this is really our beginning point, and we got a bunch of names. You see, now part of this problem that we have with Hispanics, as well as with African Americans, as well as with Appalachian whites, is that our first line of investigation is the manuscript census. And that was in 1940. It's now been released for historians. But they weren't here then. I mean, if there were Hispanics, they were working on farms, they probably didn't get into the census. They were only temporary workers, and the census takers, if they even thought about it, didn't bother to get their names down and all this other information. Then by 1950, a lot of them had gone back to Mexico. And we don't get them that way either. So we have to get them in between. Now, fortunately, the federal government did a census of 11 arsenals of democracy all over the country in 1944, the year that this directory was published. And I'm hoping that they made a manuscript of that. And I checked with the state archives, that was news to them. But I'm hoping it will be released in 2 years, if there is such a thing. And that'll give us a pretty good clue. We get the names, we get the origins, we get the ages and all of this stuff about all of these thousands of workers here in Muskegon County. And they'll have another one for Detroit, but that's too big for me to handle. But I can handle Muskegon County, just like Richard can handle, the veterans of Muskegon County. It's a big job, but it's not like the whole state of Michigan. So it's doable if that still exists. So that's really where I came in contact with these folks. Well, that meeting at Hackley then led to a trip over to the state library, back when they were open more often than they are today. And then we got back to work doing all kinds of other research, looking for other sources of information, which is really a big part of the problem. Now, one thing about doing historical research, which you will find out if you haven't already, eventually you're going to have to publish something or produce something, and you will do the best you can with what you have. But as soon as that book or thing goes on the market, Richard's exhibit goes up, he will immediately start learning stuff he never learned before. Because what will happen is somebody will take a look at a picture and say, well, you got a picture of Uncle Joe and Uncle Hector, but you don't have Aunt Esmeralda, and you don't have Cousin Sue, and all these other things. What's the matter with you? Are you dumb? Are you stupid? You didn't get this? Well, of course they won't say that. But what will happen is that you will publish something, you will give a talk somewhere, you'll give a presentation, and umpteen people will come up afterwards and tell you what you missed, what you didn't know. I learned something today. I learned there were braceros in Ravenna. Did you know that? Oh, you did? Well, I didn't know that. It was news to me.
Swanson's. Swanson's.
Well, I didn't know
Still
those
has
things.
hired.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are plenty of other stories like that around. I did find the braceros in Dowagiac that they didn't know about. And then there were a few scattered around. Jane Gonzalez mentions them as well in her oral history, which she gave many, many years ago. But that will happen. Richard will do his thing, and he'll find the same thing. There will be things coming out of the woodwork that he didn't know. At the same time, if you don't do that work, even though it's premature, even though you haven't gathered everything, you have to get it out there while some of these people are still living, because otherwise you won't be able to get them at all, you see. So you can't afford to have a big ego about this. You have to be ready to take the jibes of people who will tell you how dumb you are because you ignored something or didn't do something. But so what? I don't take that seriously. That's just the way it is,
It's part of the process.
It is, and you have to be willing to accept those kinds of problems. A couple of other things. Of course, I've met with this group and some others for on many occasions, and we talked about other people to involve. Our original plan was to have a Hispanic, he's third generation, Mexican-American, Roger Sesteta as our graphic artist. But he took sick, and then we lost contact with him. And weren't able to get him. So I had a colleague of mine, Dana Giroux, put it together, but she did a good job, but she wasn't able to, she didn't have the right equipment, the right program to do it. So then I asked Steve Demos to work on the final presentation. So this book really ought to have his name in there as well, but he's in we do have a picture of him in there, but he's too modest to put his name on the book. So he's a very important element. And I think he's working with Richard on his project somewhat too, and I know he's working on my current project, the medical history of Muskegon County, which overlaps with Richard's work also. We should not ignore the fact that when you're going to publish a book, you need money. Now, we were lucky. We didn't have to pay anybody here at the table. They gave their help willingly. We didn't have to pay Steve, didn't have to pay Dana. They did their thing for nothing. Those are the two big expenses. If you're going to write a book, you better plan about $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for those two right up from the beginning. All we had to pay for was printing, which is plenty, but still, I think we could get this job done for about $7,000 or $8,000, as I remember. And we got two big grants. Don't say, well, they'll never give us any money. They might very well give you some money. We got a large grant from the Cucci Foundation at Grand Valley. This is a man who retired as an anthropologist and donated a large amount of money to Grand Valley for use with ethnic minorities, mainly, women and ethnic minorities. And then we got another similar grant from the Muskegon Foundation, and we're thankful to both of them. We couldn't have done this without that kind of funding. And of course, we had it printed at Custom Service Printers, which is a Muskegon. This is another thing we argue about. I produced a book many years ago, and my advisor said, well, I can have it printed in China for you for a whole lot less. And I said, no, we're not going to have it printed in China. I didn't know about Custom Service Printers, but I had it printed in Michigan. So, try to take advantage of local companies as much as possible if you're doing a local history project. They are part of the community too, and they will appreciate, and you're putting local people to work. So that's what we always try to do. Well, I'm going to sit down now, and then you'll tell me what else is going to happen, huh?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, see, let's hear from Dr. Daniel Yates, please, because he was and is